Ever have one of those days that starts out ordinary, but ends in a way that changes your life forever? This is that day. But before we dive in, I want you to do something real quick. Drop your location in the comments section. Where in the world are you watching from? Let's see how far this story travels. And don't forget to subscribe, because what you're about to hear will shock you, move you, and maybe even bring tears to your eyes. He was just a 16-year-old boy, walking down the street in a hoodie, hands in his pockets, headphones in. It was late afternoon, the sun hanging low like it didn't want to go down just yet. He had just left the community library after studying for a math test. His mother always told him, "Come straight home, no stopping, no distractions." And he tried to listen, he really did, but sometimes he liked to walk, think, clear his head. He wasn't causing any trouble, wasn't even making noise, just walking, breathing, existing. But in a world that doesn't always see you for who you are, existing can feel like a threat. Officer Tom Maddox had been on the force for nearly 22 years. Decorated, respected, feared in some circles. He prided himself on having a gut instinct, a sixth sense for danger. That's what he called it. Others called it something else. He was patrolling the south side of town when a dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio. Suspicious male in the area, black hoodie, looked like he might be casing the neighborhood. That was all the information he needed. He turned the wheel with one sharp motion and cruised down Elm Street. And there he was, the teen, walking slowly, looking around, alone. Tom's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. He pulled over, fast to fast. The teen looked up, confused, startled. 1 second he was alone. The next, red and blue lights were flashing in his face, hands where I could see them. "Now," Tom barked. The boy froze. "I didn't do anything," the boy said, his voice shaking, barely above a whisper. But Tom was already stepping out of the cruiser, already reaching for his belt. "Turn around, hands on the wall," Tom ordered. The teen hesitated. "I'm just walking home." I said turn around. And just like that, the boy's world turned upside down. Cold metal tightened around his wrists. His heart pounded so loud it drowned out the sirens. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just stood there, cuffed, terrified, confused. "You got ID?" Tom asked. The boy didn't answer. Tom patted him down, found a wallet, pulled out a school ID card, looked at the name, the photo, the age, and something inside him started to twist. Name, Jordan Ellis. Eyes, brown. Date of birth, October 5th. Tom's hand shook, just a little. His fingers flipped the card over again. Ellis, that name. A chill ran down his spine. He stared at the boy again, really stared this time. That jawline, that nose, those eyes. No, it couldn't be. "Who's your mother?" Tom asked. Jordan blinked, startled. "Why? What's your mother's name?" "Danielle. Danielle Ellis." Tom stepped back, his knees nearly buckled. He remembered Danielle from 17 years ago, a woman he had loved once, briefly, wildly, a summer fling that had ended as fast as it began. They lost touch. She'd moved across town. He got married, had his own life, but Danielle ... She never told him. He looked at the boy again. The resemblance was undeniable now. The high cheekbones, the gap in the front teeth, the eyes. "My God," Tom whispered, "you're my ... He didn't finish the sentence. Jordan was still trying to make sense of what was happening. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Tom didn't answer. He slowly removed the cuffs, his hands trembling. Jordan rubbed his wrists, confused and still afraid. "I need to call your mother," Tom said, his voice low. "No, I need to go home," Jordan said, backing away. Tom reached out, but Jordan flinched, and that broke something in him. This boy, his son, was afraid of him. The silence stretched long and painful. Tom took a deep breath. I think I'm your father." Jordan froze. "No," he said. "No way. My dad's dead." Tom shook his head. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." Jordan's breathing got shallow. "You arrested me. I didn't know," Tom said again. "If I had known, but you didn't see me. You just saw a black kid in a hoodie." Tom had no answer for that. He had spent decades enforcing the law, trusting his instincts, and now those instincts had led him to handcuff his own blood. "I need to take you home," Tom said. Jordan shook his head. "You're not taking me anywhere. Please, let me explain." But Jordan was already walking away. Tom didn't stop him. He couldn't. He watched his son disappear down the street, swallowed by shadows and silence. He sat back in the squad car, numb, and then his phone rang. It was Danielle. "Tom," she said, "Jordan just came home. What the hell happened?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "He's my son, isn't he?" The silence on the other end was confirmation enough. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't tell you," she said. "I didn't think you care." Tom felt like the ground beneath him had cracked wide open. "I need to fix this," he said. "I need to be there." "It's too late, Tom," Danielle replied. "You arrested him. You treated him like a suspect, not a son." "I didn't know," he said again, but the words felt weaker every time Danielle hung up. Tom sat alone, the weight of his badge suddenly unbearable. The story doesn't end here. The sirens wailed in the distance, but Thomas didn't hear them. His ears were filled with a soundless roar, a mix of disbelief, fear, and 1,000 memories he couldn't hold back anymore. The teenager, his son, sat in the back of the squad car, his eyes wide and still filled with confusion, not knowing the man who had just cuffed him was the man who had given him life. And Thomas, he had no idea how to explain it. He had spent years hiding the past. Now, the past had cuffed him by the wrist and wouldn't let go. Before we dive deep, drop the location you're watching from in the comments section. It's always amazing to see where our viewers are tuning in from across the world. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop your thoughts on this powerful story in the comments. He drove in silence. The boy in the back seat, Michael, looked too much like him. The same jawline, the same nervous tapping of the foot. Thomas could barely glance at the rearview mirror without seeing a younger version of himself. Every red light felt like a judgment, every honk a reminder of what he'd just done. He pulled into the precinct. Routine kicked in, paperwork, logging evidence, processing a minor. But nothing about this was routine. He stared at the boy's name on the intake form. Michael D. Lewis. The middle initial made his stomach twist. Denise, her name, his ex, the woman he had once loved, but left behind when duty, fear, and confusion swallowed him whole. He watched as Michael was fingerprinted, his face stoic, but those eyes, those familiar eyes, held pain, confusion, anger, and still, no recognition. Thomas didn't say anything, couldn't. What could he say? "Hey kid, I know I just slammed you against a wall and read you your rights, but I'm also the reason you were born." He sat in his car after his shift, the radio silent, the engine off. He gripped the wheel with both hands, heart thundering in his chest. He thought about that summer 19 years ago. Denise had told him she was pregnant. He had panicked. He was young, newly recruited, trying to prove himself in a department that didn't exactly smile on interracial relationships. So he ran, cut her off, blocked her number, told himself it was for the best. But now, karma didn't knock. It kicked the damn door open. He didn't go home that night. Instead, he found himself driving to an address he hadn't visited in nearly 2 decades. The neighborhood was rougher than he remembered, but the house was the same. He sat in the car, watching the porch, wondering if she still lived there. The door opened. She stepped out. Denise, older, tired, but unmistakably her. Their eyes met from across the street. Her face twisted in confusion, recognition, then fury. She stormed across the road. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Thomas." He stepped out slowly. "It's Michael. I picked him up today." Her face changed, not softer, just heavier, like his words had added another weight to years of already carrying too much. "You arrested your own son," she spat. "You didn't recognize him." I didn't know," he said, voice low, cracking. She slapped him, not hard, but enough to shake him. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up now and pretend to care." "I'm not pretending," he whispered. "You left 19 years ago. We needed you. He needed you. I begged you to stay." He remembered every word, every tear. "I was scared." She laughed bitterly. "You were a coward." They stood there in silence as the streetlights buzzed overhead. Finally, she said, "He doesn't know. I told him his father died before he was born." Thomas felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. "I couldn't bear to tell him his father abandoned him, that his father wore a badge and still walked away. So I lied. I made you a hero." He sank onto the curb, head in hands. "What do I do now?" Denise shook her head. "You can't undo the years, but you can start by not hurting him again." The next morning, Thomas sat in the waiting room of the juvenile center. Michael hadn't been released yet. Paperwork, delays, the usual bureaucracy. But Denise had made a few calls, pulled some strings. She had always been resourceful. Michael walked out, eyes wary. He froze when he saw Thomas. "I'm taking you home," Thomas said. Michael didn't speak. He just walked past him and got into the passenger seat. The silence in the car was deafening. "I knew your mother," Thomas finally said. "A long time ago." Michael didn't reply. "I didn't know. I didn't know you were my father." Michael cut in. Thomas's hands tightened on the wheel. "Yes." Michael turned to look at him, face unreadable. "She told me you were dead." "I know. Maybe you are." Thomas flinched, but he didn't argue. They got to the house. Michael got out without a word. Thomas stayed behind, watching him walk inside, wondering if this was it, if this was all he'd ever get. That night, he went back to the precinct, sat in his office. He looked through old files, watched old photos, thought about the badge, the uniform, what it had cost him. The next day, he requested a reassignment. No more patrol, no more street work. He wanted desk duty, youth liaison, anything that kept him off the streets and closer to the community. His supervisor raised an eyebrow. "Why the sudden change?" "Because I arrested my own son yesterday, and I didn't even recognize him." It was the first step, small, but necessary. Over the next few weeks, Thomas began showing up, not just physically. He helped Denise around the house, fixed things, took care of bills, made dinners, tried to earn a sliver of trust. Michael ignored him for days, then weeks, until one day, he came home with a black eye. Thomas stood. "What happened?" Michael hesitated. "Some kids said I think I'm better than them, that I act a white." Thomas swallowed hard. "Did you fight back?" "No, I walked away." Thomas nodded. "Good. You did the right thing." Michael sat down for the first time, willingly. "Were you scared when you became a cop?" he asked. Thomas looked at him, terrified. "Why'd you do it?" "Because I thought I could make a difference. But I lost myself in the process." Michael looked at the floor. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you." Thomas nodded. "I don't expect you to. I just want to be here now." Michael stood, walked away, but he didn't slam the door this time. That night, Thomas cried. For the first time in years, he had been trained to control emotion, but this wasn't pain. It was a slow unraveling, a lifetime of regret bleeding through the seams. Weeks passed, trust built brick by brick, not perfectly, but steadily. One afternoon, Michael walked into Thomas's office at the precinct. "You said you wanted to make a difference?" "Yes." "Teach me how." Thomas stood, stunned. "What do you mean?" "I want to help. I want to know how the system works." From the inside, Thomas felt something shift. A door crack open. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. People were still talking about what had just happened with Officer Briggs and Jamal at the precinct. News had leaked, even though no reporter had the full story yet. A white cop wrongfully arresting a black teen wasn't new, but discovering that same teen was his biological son, that was the type of thing that tore through the city like wildfire. But the world didn't yet know the full story. Only those close to it were holding their breath waiting for what would come next. Briggs sat alone in his car that night, engine off, badge in his pocket, just staring into the darkness. The streets outside the window were damp from a light drizzle, and the city lights bled through the mist like distant ghosts. Every breath he took now felt heavier, every second louder. The face of Jamal haunted him, not as a suspect, but as a son, his son. He kept replaying the moment Jamal looked at him with those fierce eyes. There was confusion, hurt, and underneath it all, something that pierced deeper than anger. It was recognition, a reflection. Briggs had never felt so powerless, so human, so exposed. He didn't tell anyone at the station. Not yet. They thought it was just another arrest that went sideways. Another story of racial profiling. But the truth was deeper, more personal, and for Briggs, more painful. Earlier that day, Jamal had refused to speak to him after the release. He was picked up by his foster mother, Mrs. Turner. She had looked at Briggs with silent fury. No words exchanged, but a message was delivered clearly. He wasn't welcome. Back in their modest home in the east side of the city, Jamal paced his room. The floorboards creaked with every step. His thoughts were like thunderclaps, his fists clenched tight. How dare he? How dare that man walk into his life this way? After all these years, after abandoning him and his mother like they were nothing. But the truth was, Jamal didn't know the full story either. To my sweet Jamal, If anything ever happens to me, know that your father wasn't a monster. Things were complicated. We made mistakes, but he loved you. Maybe from afar, maybe silently. But don't let hate bury that truth. I hope one day, life gives you a chance to forgive. His mother's handwriting was unmistakable. Jamal closed his eyes and felt a wave of emotion he hadn't prepared for. Grief, confusion, pain, but also possibility. Meanwhile, Briggs was knocking on a door, not Jamal's, but his own mother's. He hadn't visited in years, not since the fallout. She opened slowly, a cane in one hand, wrinkles deeper, but her eyes still sharp. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "I have," Briggs replied, "and he's my son." Her expression shifted. She let him in. They talked about everything, about the love he lost, about the child he never raised, about the choices he made, the pressure from the force, the shame, the guilt, and the fear that kept him distant. She didn't let him off the hook, but she listened. Then, something shifted. Briggs made a decision. He wasn't going to run anymore. The next morning, he was back outside Mrs. Turner's house, not in uniform, just as a man, a father. Jamal watched him from the window. His heart raced. His mind screamed, but his feet, they moved. He stepped outside. Silence. Briggs spoke first. "I know I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve your time, but I need you to hear me." Jamal didn't interrupt. "I messed up. I should have fought harder to be in your life. I should have been there for your mother. I was afraid of the department, of the scandal, of everything, but none of it matters now. What matters is you." Tears welled in Jamal's eyes, but he blinked them away. "You arrested me." "I did, and that's something I'll regret forever. But even then, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." Silence again. "You think words will fix this?" Jamal asked. "No. But maybe they could start something. A conversation, a connection, a road to something better. Not perfect, just better." Jamal didn't respond, not with words, but he didn't walk away either. That was something. Hours later, Jamal sat in the park, earbuds in, staring at the pond. He was thinking, processing, healing, maybe. Then, a voice interrupted his thoughts, a familiar one. "Hey, mind if I sit?" It was Briggs. They sat in silence, just a father and a son. One beginning, one ending, or maybe both beginning again. But just when it seemed like healing had begun, a patrol car rolled up slowly beside them. Briggs stood. "It's okay," he told Jamal. "They're with me." But the officers didn't recognize him without his badge. One stepped out. "Is there a problem here, sir?" Jamal's fist clenched again. "No," Briggs said calmly. "This is my son." The officer's eyes narrowed. "License and ID?" Briggs slowly reached for his wallet. "I'm off duty. Officer Briggs. Badge 1743. The officer paused, looked confused. Briggs turned to Jamal. "It never ends, but maybe one day it will." Jamal nodded. "Not today, but maybe one day." And with that, they walked away together. One step, then another. But the shadows still followed, and the past wasn't done with them yet. Because what neither of them knew was that someone had recorded the arrest, and that video was about to go viral. A video that would ignite a city and bring their story to every screen in America. He didn't know how to look him in the eye. Officer Daniel sat by the cold edge of the hospital chair, heart pounding, guilt choking every breath he tried to take. Across from him, Jamal lay unconscious, his breathing shallow, wrapped in bandages and wires. The boy, the son he arrested. The boy, the son he didn't know he had. Before we dive deeper into this unfolding storm of truth, pain, and redemption, pause for a moment. If you're just joining us, drop the location you're watching from in the comment section. We love to see how far this story is reaching. And if this story has touched you even a little, we want to hear your thoughts. Daniel hadn't slept, not since the arrest, not since he'd held Jamal's trembling arms behind his back and ignored the terrified look in his son's eyes. He kept replaying it, the way Jamal had tried to explain, the way he'd screamed, "You don't know me." He didn't. That was the brutal truth. Now, after all these years, Jamal was right there, and Daniel couldn't undo the years of silence, absence, and systemic betrayal. Monica, Jamal's mother, entered the hospital room, her expression unreadable. "I need to talk to him," Daniel said, voice hoarse. "He can't hear you right now," she replied coldly, "but you can start explaining." He tried. He spoke of his younger days, of Monica walking away, of not knowing she was pregnant, of his failures, of his ignorance. But words felt hollow. Then Jamal's eyes fluttered open. Silence filled the room. Jamal blinked, disoriented. He looked from his mother to Daniel. Recognition came slowly, then disbelief, then pain. "You," Jamal croaked. "I didn't know." Daniel said quickly, "I swear to you, I didn't know." Jamal looked away. Daniel stood up, unsure if he should stay or go. "I want to make this right." "There's no right," Jamal whispered. "Only what's left." Daniel sat back down. "Then let me fix what's left." In the following days, Daniel stayed by Jamal's side, not as a cop, not as a man seeking redemption, but as a father finally waking up from the coma of denial. He brought books, talked to the nurses, argued with the doctors when they weren't fast enough, held Jamal's hand when he couldn't speak, laughed softly at the boy's dry humor, sat quietly when Jamal didn't want words. But something was shifting in Jamal. The anger didn't disappear, but the curiosity grew. He began to ask questions. "Why'd you become a cop?" Daniel was honest. "To protect people, to feel like I mattered." But I lost sight of that. I let the system mold me. "Did you ever think about us? I didn't even know you existed." Silence. Then Jamal said, "Maybe that was a problem. In those sterile hospital walls, the strangers who shared blood began to chip away at the walls between them." Meanwhile, the story of the arrest went viral. Body cam footage leaked. People were outraged. The headlines were brutal. Black teen wrongfully arrested by his own father. Blue bloodline. Officer's shocking family discovery. Daniel was suspended, pending investigation. But that wasn't what broke him. It was when Jamal looked at him and said, "I need you to fight for more than just me." That's when everything changed. Daniel knew what he had to do. It wasn't just about patching up the cracks in his family. It was about taking a stand for Jamal, for the boys like Jamal, for the fathers like him who got lost in the blue. He called a press conference. He stood before a sea of reporters, trembling. "I failed," he said, "not just as a cop, but as a father, as a man. I perpetuated a system that criminalizes identity, that judges skin color before character. But I'm done being silent. My name is Daniel Hart, and I arrested my own son because of bias. I won't let that happen again." The world gasped. Some mocked, some applauded, but one voice mattered. Jamal, watching from his hospital bed. White cop arrests black teen for looking suspicious, then realizes he's his son. Officer Daniel sat by the cold edge of the hospital chair, heart pounding, guilt choking every breath he tried to take. Across from him, Jamal lay unconscious, his breathing shallow, wrapped in bandages and wires. The boy, the son he'd arrested. The boy, the son he didn't know he had. Before we dive deeper into this unfolding storm of truth, pain, and redemption, pause for a moment. If you're just joining us, drop the location you're watching from in the comments section. We love to see how far this story is reaching, and if this story has touched you even a little, we want to hear your thoughts. Daniel hadn't slept, not since the arrest, not since he'd held Jamal's trembling arms behind his back and ignored the terrified look in his son's eyes. He kept replaying it, the way Jamal had tried to explain, the way he'd screamed, "You don't know me." He didn't. That was the brutal truth. Now, after all these years, Jamal was right there, and Daniel couldn't undo the years of silence, absence, and systemic betrayal. Monica, Jamal's mother, entered the hospital room, her expression unreadable. "I need to talk to him," Daniel said, voice hoarse. "He can't hear you right now," she replied coldly, "but you can start explaining." He tried. He spoke of his younger days, of Monica walking away, of not knowing she was pregnant, of his failures, of his ignorance, but words felt hollow. Then Jamal's eyes fluttered open. Silence filled the room. Jamal blinked, disoriented. He looked from his mother to Daniel. Recognition came slowly, then disbelief, then pain. "You?" Jamal croaked. "I didn't know." Daniel said quickly, "I swear to you, I didn't know." Jamal looked away. Daniel stood up, unsure if he should stay or go. "I want to make this right." There's no right, Jamal whispered. Only what's left. Daniel sat back down. Then let me fix what's left. In the following days, Daniel stayed by Jamal's side, not as a cop, not as a man seeking redemption, but as a father finally waking up from the coma of denial. He brought books, talked to the nurses, argued with the doctors when they weren't fast enough, held Jamal's hand when he couldn't speak, laughed softly at the boy's dry humor, sat quietly when Jamal didn't want words. But something was shifting in Jamal. The anger didn't disappear, but the curiosity grew. He began to ask questions. Why'd you become a cop? Daniel was honest. To protect people, to feel like I mattered. But I lost sight of that. I let the system mold me. Did you ever think about us? I didn't even know you existed. Silence. Then Jamal said, maybe that was the problem. In those sterile hospital walls, the strangers who shared blood began to chip away at the walls between them. Meanwhile, the story of the arrest went viral. Body cam footage leaked. People were outraged. The headlines were brutal. Black teen wrongfully arrested by his own father. Blue bloodline. Officers shocking family discovery. Daniel was suspended, pending investigation. But that wasn't what broke him. It was when Jamal looked at him and said, I need you to fight for more than just me. That's when everything changed. Daniel knew what he had to do. It wasn't just about patching up the cracks in his family. It was about taking a stand for Jamal, for the boys like Jamal, for the fathers like him who got lost in the blue. He called a press conference. He stood before a sea of reporters, trembling. I failed, he said, not just as a cop, but as a father, as a man. I perpetuated a system that criminalizes identity, that judges skin color before character. But I'm done being silent. My name is Daniel Hart, and I arrested my own son because of bias. I won't let that happen again. The world gasped. Some mocked, some applauded, but one voice mattered. Jamal, watching from his hospital bed, whispered, now do something with it. And Daniel did. He joined reform groups. He testified before committees. He lobbied for community policing reform spurred. Now do something with it. And Daniel did. He joined reform groups. He testified before committees. He lobbied for community policing reform. He worked with civil rights lawyers, not to erase his shame, but to turn it into purpose. And through it all, Jamal watched, still healing, still hurting, but watching. And then, one day, Jamal stood outside the precinct with a speech in his hand. He looked at the crowd. My father arrested me because I look suspicious, but I am not a suspect. I am a son, a student, a human being. And it's time we stop judging books by the skin of their covers. The crowd erupted. Tears streamed down Daniel's face. But the story isn't over, because something happens next that will shake their world again. A twist neither of them saw coming. So if you've stayed this far, don't stop now. Episode 5 will break everything wide open. Subscribe so you don't miss the final part of this story. And tell us in the comments, what do you think happens next? What would you do if you were Daniel or Jamal? We'll see you in the final episode. He stood there, motionless. The sun had begun its descent, casting long golden shadows across the quiet suburb. Officer Daniel felt his knees weaken as the truth that had been slapping him across the face for the past few days now screamed in his ears. He had arrested his own son, Tyrese, that same infant he had once rocked to sleep in a hospital room 17 years ago. He had seen the resemblance, but denial had clouded his judgment. He had felt something something unsettling deep in his gut when he pulled the young man over, but his training had overridden his instincts. Now, those instincts mocked him. A phone call had changed everything. Dawn, there's something you need to hear. I think you arrested our son. He remembered nearly dropping the phone. All the years he had begged God for a second chance to meet his child. All the guilt he buried in police paperwork and long hours. All the pain he told himself was righteous suffering. And now, in the cruelest twist of fate, their first reunion had been with him in uniform and Tyrese in handcuffs. Daniel dropped to his knees. He didn't care that he was in uniform. He didn't care that neighbors watched from their porches, confused and silent. He wept because the cost of assumptions had never felt heavier. The door behind him creaked open. Tyrese stepped out slowly, hesitant. He'd been released on all charges after the truth came out. Community outrage had exploded, but he stayed quiet. Not because he was weak, but because the noise inside him was louder than the protests. Daniel turned to see him, eyes swollen, but filled with something Daniel hadn't expected: forgiveness. Not full forgiveness, but a seed. I don't know if I can call you Dad, Tyrese said, voice shaky. But I do know you need to hear me. Daniel stood, trembling. Son, I'm not finished. Tyrese interrupted. You judged me like the world judges black boys every day. You looked at me and saw a threat, not a child, not a boy you once held, not even a human. You saw what you were trained to see, and that nearly broke me. Daniel nodded slowly, shame wrapped around him like barbed wire. But I saw something in your eyes that day, too. Tyrese continued. Pain, fear. Like you were scared of what you were becoming. That's the only reason I didn't hate you. Daniel tried to step closer. Tyrese didn't move. I'm not promising you a relationship. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I'm gonna live my life. I'm going to college. I'm going to be someone. And you're going to watch. You're going to see who I really am. Not who the badge told you to fear. It was more than Daniel deserved. But it was hope. And that was enough. Months passed. Tyrese became a symbol in the community, not of trauma, but of triumph. He told his story on stages, in schools, on podcasts, always ending with the same words. If the world had judged me by how I looked that day, I wouldn't be here. But I chose to become more than their assumptions. You can, too. Daniel watched every speech, silently, anonymously. Each one cut and healed him at the same time. He had taken leave from the force, attended therapy, sat in town halls and listened to mothers cry about sons who didn't make it. He knew he couldn't erase what he'd done, but he could ensure he never did it again. One afternoon, Tyrese stood at a community event, accepting an award. The mayor handed it to him. Applause roared, and in the crowd, Daniel stood. Tyrese saw him. Their eyes met, and this time, Tyrese nodded. Just a nod, but it was more than Daniel had ever hoped for. He exhaled, long and hard, because sometimes, karma doesn't come as punishment, it comes as a lesson, a mirror, a chance to make things right. And respect, it's not earned by authority, it's given by humanity. This is the story of a man who wore a badge and a boy who wore trauma. But in the end, they both removed their masks and found something buried beneath the pain. Truth, identity, and the first steps toward healing. What would you have done in Tyrese's shoes? What does forgiveness mean to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Also, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Your voice matters.